Today's gospel reading is really one of the classics. If you ask anyone for one of the stories of Jesus in the gospel, one of his miracles, that 9 times out of 10, this is going to be one of the first things people mention, because it just so captures our imagination, because it's such an incredible sign. Jesus feeding so many with so little. And since we're so amazed by this, since it so captures our imagination, since it fascinates us so much, we're familiar with it. And it sometimes leads to us to think that we know exactly what all is going on, that this is just an incredible sign of God that shows how powerful he is. Or if it's a little more than that, it just shows that God will provide for his people. And these are all good and true meanings to this passage, and much could be said on those things alone. But if we focus just on what we're familiar with, just this overarching view of the story, we'll miss so much of what Jesus is trying to do here. Because if you look at these details, all those little details that the Apostle John uses in his gospel to show what's going on, they point to such a bigger picture. They're so easy to miss because they sound just like a simple way to make a setting, that to give a little context to what's going on. But these details really, to an audience who would have heard this, who would have seen it, would have revealed a much bigger picture of what's happening. And most important of all these details is that simple line of the time of the Passover was near, which might not seem like much to us, but to a Jew at that time, Passover was more important than anything else. It was the feast of feasts. It was the most important days of their calendar. It was that great festival that remembered and recalled what God did for his people down in Egypt, when he freed them from slavery, when he rescued them from an enemy that was far more powerful than they were, where he brought them out of an impossible situation to a place of freedom and rest. But for the Jews, it was more than just remembering that God did this for them so many years ago. It's more than just remembering their history. For them, when they celebrate the Passover was made present once again. So that when they celebrated it, it's as if they were there in Egypt all those years ago. It became new. It became present again. It's like if on the 4th of July, instead of just remembering us declaring our independence, if we were actually there in the hall with the Continental Congress signing the Declaration of Independence. They firmly believe, and we believe as well, that the Passover was made present again. That God's saving action, God's act to liberate them from slavery, was made present once again. And because of this, it becomes such a hopeful time for the Jews, especially in the time of Jesus. Because once again, they found themselves under the power of an enemy who was far stronger than they were. They once again were not free. And though they weren't slaves at this time, although they weren't being sent out to labor for the Romans, they still were not free. They still had that fear of impending and possible death over their heads. The Romans could have wiped them out at any point they wanted. And there was fear because of that. They were not able to have that rest that they desired. So every time when Passover was made new, when it was really became present once again, there was always the hope in the Jewish people's mind that this might just be the year. This might just be the time when God will come and free us again. We might finally be free again this year. And then along comes Jesus. And the people, knowing this and hoping to be set free once again, they see Jesus. And they see what he does. They see him cross the sea. They see him go up and sit on top of the mountain. They see him seemingly bring down bread from heaven. And by seeing each of every one of these things, their mind would once again go back to their time in Egypt, where God led them across the Red Sea into freedom, where God gave them their covenant, the 10 Commandments, all of his blessings from the mountain, where God brought down a manna from heaven for them to eat in the desert. They'd recognize all of these signs, and it would excite them, because they thought, here's the one that God has promised. We might actually get it this year. We might finally be set free. And this is why they go and try to make Jesus king, because they think this is our chance. This is our chance to be rid of the Romans. This is our chance to be our own free people once again. And they get caught up in this expectation of how God is going to act, because they're so familiar with their story, their history. And they miss the fact that Jesus is there to do something greater. I'm sure each and every one of us know that Jesus had a greater mission than just coming and kicking the Romans out of Jerusalem. We know this because it didn't happen. But the people missed it. They missed that Jesus was trying to do something greater. And they missed the fact that what they really wanted, what they wanted God to do for them, Jesus was already giving them in this moment. Because they wanted to be free, and they wanted to have their desires satisfied. Even deeper than freedom, that's what they wanted. And if we look at the details, Jesus was giving it to them. They just missed it. Because when Jesus, once again, he commanded them to recline, to eat. And this seems like nothing to us, but back in the day, only free people were able to recline and eat. Those who were slaves, those who were servants, they had to stand to eat, maybe with a chair, but never recline. So Jesus commands them to recline to show them, if you are with me, you are free, even if you don't realize it. And then we also get the sign, the fact that they were fed to the point where all of them were full, and yet there was still more left over. All of their desires were satisfied. Their hunger, their need was taken care of abundantly, to the point where there was even more left over to take care of them. Jesus was showing that if you are with me, you will be free and you will be taken care of. Everything that people wanted, everything that they knew they needed, everything they needed for rest, Jesus was offering them right then and there. But they thought he was going to do something else, and they missed the picture. And how often are we in that same boat? That God is offering something so great to us, but we expect him to do something different, that we miss the gift that he's trying to give us. I mean, I know myself, I fall into this boat. I just have to think back to the last fall. I had a period where I just couldn't get a good night's sleep, where I was constantly restless. And I expected God so much to act on the point of, well, he'll just make me sleep again, and that'll take care of it. But month after month, week after week, it just continued to drag on, and what I expected God to do didn't happen. And the change came where I finally realized, where the Lord showed me that he was offering me that joy, that peace, that rest that I so needed, independent of the sleep. And it was only in that moment where I stopped trying to make God act in the way that I wanted him to, that I finally received what I wanted all along. That I had that rest, that peace, that joy that the Lord desired for me to have, but according to his own plan. I got caught up in my own expectation of how the Lord should act, that I missed the gift that he was trying to give me. And the Lord has that plan for each of us. And he's going on to explain in the next few weeks. We're going to keep on with this section from John, and he's going to explain to the people that gift that he's trying to give them, that gift of himself. But the people aren't willing to receive it because they have a different expectation of what Jesus should give them. We're going to look at these as well, and I think it's important for us just to, as we go forward into these next 4 weeks we're going to spend with John, to take stock for ourselves. What expectations do we have of the Lord? What do we think he's going to do for us? How do we think he's going to do it? We have to know what we're expecting and to let go of it. Because the Lord has a far bigger picture, a far better plan in mind. Being with him is the place where we'll find that rest that our hearts so desire, where we'll finally lose that restlessness that we feel so often. But it's only accomplished not by anything we do or anything we want the Lord to do for us, how we think he should act, but by his own gift. Are we willing to receive that gift on the Lord's term? Because that is the only way we're going to find that rest that we so desire.